Great morning, great morning. Hey, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. What's going on? What's going on? I'm going to give you guys a chance to come in. God is amazing. I'm going to let y'all slide on in, slide on in, slide on in. And while y'all are sliding, I'm getting ready to snap and sip. I need my snap and sip this morning. Good morning. Hey, Kim. What's going on, beautiful? Good to see you, gorgeous. So we got Delaware in the house. Y'all let me know who's here and where you're tuning in from. Who's here and where you're tuning in from. All right, girl. Well, I'm going to try to make sure you get a little something before you get there, okay? Y'all come on in. Come on in. Yes, yes, yes. Good morning, you guys. Listen, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started. I just, anyone who knows me, right? There's some things that you know about me, right? I'm really straightforward. I'm very much to the point. I don't deal with a lot of foolishness. I don't deal with a lot of mess. I believe order is important. And I believe that there's always a way to do everything that we do in life. Absolutely everything. And so for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and this morning I need to get started with some music. Okay, we're gonna get started with some music because I will tell you something. When you are in those times of your life where you're under the most pressure, there's the most tension, it is the easiest for the enemy to take you off track and take you off course and off target and take you out of yourself. So what I've learned to do is allow God's spirit to move in me so my flesh don't move. At some point we've got to mature. We've got to mature to the point where we don't allow our flesh to dictate our actions, right? Or our responses or our reactions or any of that, right? We've got to mature. And so sometimes that means knowing yourself enough to know when you need a moment. And this morning, I want to share this song with you guys because, sometimes you got to just get in this place right here, this place, because it's the only thing that will get you through. So I'm going to share with you guys some Pastor Mike Jr. Y'all know that's my boy. Let me share my screen over here because this is facts for me today. All I want is God, all I want. And I need him. You guys let me know if you can hear.
In spite of my issues, you still love me. Beyond my frailties, beyond my fears, you see past my transgressions. You see past all of my shame. Decided you love me. Love me in spite of me. You gave me beauty for ashes, joy for my mourning, strength when I'm weak. Yes. Everything has changed. I'm no longer the same. My only desire is you. All I want is you. All I need is you. Nothing else matters as long as I'm with you. All I want is you. All I need is you, yeah. Nothing else matters as long as I'm with you. All I want is you.
In spite of my issues, you still love me. Beyond my frailties, beyond my sin, all the mistakes I made, all the hurt, all the guilt and shame, decided to love me. You love me in spite of me.
You took everything that was wrong and gave me beauty. Yes, you did. I feel joy. You gave me strength in my weakest moments. And because of you, everything has changed. I can wave that back to my past. Right now. I spent my life chasing stuff, but now, nothing else matters.
Nothing else matters as long as I'm with you.
I may ask you for a lot, but the truth is,
all I want is you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Listen. I don't know about you all, but I am in need of God. Listen, I'm in need of him. Like there's something about what he does in my life that is so amazing and incredible. And when I look at where he's brought me, when I look at where I am today versus where I was in the past, I know nobody could have done that but God. Nobody but God could have done it. Nobody but God could have made it happen. Nobody but God could have me at the level and the maturity that I'm at now. Nobody but God. Because when I tell you, listen, when I tell you that the things that we encounter in our lives help to shape our character, but it is how that we deal with them that determines our destiny and whether you're ready, baby, I'm ready to go. Let's go. So today we're going to talk about the gift and the power of submission and love, the gift and the power of submission and love. Now, listen, y'all, you know, I always ask God, what is it that you want me to talk about today? And today he had me in Ephesians again. I said, God, we ain't out of Ephesians yet. God, you just done had me over here in this book. Like you done kept me over here. But let me tell you something about God. God is very deliberate and he's very strategic. Everything that he does has purpose attached to it. And when you are in destiny and you're walking into your destiny, there are things that he needs to deal with in you, things that he needs to deal with in others so that you can get to the place that he's trying to take you. So he took me to Ephesians chapter 5, y'all. Now we know this is where we talk about husbands and wives. Okay, so we're getting ready to talk. Some feelings might get hurt, some toes might get stepped on, but get over it because it ain't me, it's God. Okay, so let's go to Ephesians chapter 5. Let me get there. I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to talk about submission. I know y'all don't want to talk about no submission, but we're going to talk about submission. All right. So we're going to Ephesians chapter 5, and we're going to start with verse 21. We'll start with verse 21. Hold on. Let me share. All right. So let's get into it. Let's get into it. Okay. We're talking about wives and husbands. And so in this chapter, you know, the Apostle Paul has been talking to the church at Ephesus, and he's talked to them about several things. Let me scroll back up for just a second and start up there at the top. And he talked about living in the light and what it means to live in the light and how to live by the Spirit's power. So all of this is about how to live, right? So he gets down to verse 21 and he starts talking to husbands and wives. Now he starts talking to husbands and wives, and he goes on and he says this. He says, and further, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Now listen, he didn't say submit to one another because of gender. He didn't say submit to one another because of position. He said submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. But this is very important because he's moving into the husband and the wife's relationship, but there are some lessons that we can learn in terms of just all of our relationships, period, okay? He says, and further, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. For wives, this means, listen, he's talking to wives specifically now. For wives, this means submit to your husbands as to the Lord. For a husband is the head of his wife as Christ is the head of the church. He is the savior of his body, the church. As the church submits to Christ, so you wives should submit to your husbands in everything. Okay? Listen. For wives, this means submit to your husbands as to the Lord. For a husband is the head of his wife as Christ is the head of the church. He is the savior of his body, the church. As the church submits to Christ, so you wives should submit to your husbands in everything, right? Submission, submission, submission. It's not a dirty word. It's not even about the husband. It's about God. Submit to your husbands as to the Lord, right? Now we've got several issues that we're going to address on why this may not be happening, okay? For husbands, this means love your wives just as Christ loved the church. He gave up his life for her to make her holy and clean, washed by the cleansing of God's word. He did this to present her to himself as a glorious church without a spot or wrinkle or any other blemish. Instead, she will be holy and without fault. In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as they love their own bodies. For a man who loves his wife actually shows love for himself. No one hates his own body, but feeds and cares for it, just as Christ cares for the church. And we are members of his body. As the scriptures say, a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. This is a great mystery, but it is an illustration of the way Christ and the church are one. So again, I say, each man must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Bam! Here we have in this passage a summary, a summarization of many of the problems in today's marriages. Now listen, I am not coming as one who has not been guilty of some of the things that we're getting ready to talk about. But we're getting ready to talk about them because it is necessary for us to understand the dynamics the enemy is using to destroy marriages. Okay? So let's go at the beginning. So in the beginning, it says, and further, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. The reason that you submit is out of reverence for Christ. Listen, you don't submit just because he's your husband. You are submitting out of reverence to Christ. This is about God. This is a God thing, right? So submission is not something that you just choose, just for no reason. We're submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. We're honoring Christ in our submission. Now check this out. It says, for wives, this means submit to your husbands as to the Lord. So y'all want to know why wives sometimes have problems submitting to husbands? Because sometimes they're not submitted to the Lord. Sometimes wives are not submitted to the Lord. If you can't submit to God, you definitely can't submit to a man. Like, you're not going to do it. If you won't submit to God, you will not submit to a man. Like, what? You're not submitting to the ultimate, the creator, the one who shaped you and formed you in your mother's womb. So why would you think that you're going to submit to a man? You're not going to do it, right? So that becomes a challenge. The next thing is that submission has a bad name. It has a bad name. It's a dirty word. But can I tell you, there is power in submission, and submission is actually a gift. Now, see, check this out. So the truth of the matter is, if we would be honest, right? Most women desire a man that they can feel comfortable enough with and safe enough with to submit to them. So a lot of times, the challenge is not just in the submission. The challenge is that you are choosing men. We are choosing men that we don't have the trust and the confidence in to submit to them. See, even a strong woman An independent woman wants to be able, most of them, I'm not going to say all because I can't speak for all women, but most of them want to be able to relax and rest in the arms of someone that she knows is going to keep her safe. Most women want that. They desire that. And in the absence of that, they are independent because they've got to fix it. They've got to work it out. They've got to solve it. They've got to be the one, right? Now, hear me when I say this. If you keep picking men that you don't respect enough to submit to, that's not a problem with the men. That's a problem with you. So you see how I'm pointing at myself? That's a problem with you, right? If you are picking people that you don't feel confident enough to submit to, that's you picking. The problem is your picker. The problem is you won't wait. If you marry someone, then the expectation is that you're going to submit as unto Christ. So here's the challenge. I want to challenge us. I want to challenge us on two fronts, right? As women, I want to challenge us to wait on the Lord. Wait on the Lord. I know that, when you're single, you want to be married so badly, but the crazy thing is the single people want to be married. The married people want to be single. Everybody wants everybody else's life, okay? But wait on the Lord. And two, make sure you respect that man enough to trust him with your very life. If you don't trust him with your very life, don't marry him. Don't marry him because you're going to do him and you a disservice, okay? Now, if you trust him enough to trust him with your very life and you marry him and he is not measuring up, he's not doing what he's supposed to do, does that mean that you are not supposed to submit? It doesn't. It doesn't mean that. It means that you're going to have to work harder at submission. You all, and I know from a place of having done this, I've had to do this, right? I've had to submit when I didn't necessarily feel like everything was in place, but I still had to submit. And it's about the office, right? It's like the office of the president. Regardless of who's in the office, I'm going to respect the office. You got to respect the office, even if you don't respect the person in the office. And this is where we come into problems. Like, I remember when President Trump was in office and people were like, that's not my president. Well, he was the president of the United States. And although I didn't always agree with him, I didn't necessarily respect how he did things. I had to respect the office. Listen, because that doesn't change. That doesn't change. It is God who places people in position, right? So if God placed someone in position, then I got to respect the office, even if I don't like the person, okay? So in that position, in the office of the husband, in the office of the wife, okay? In those roles, there are things that we have to do. And listen, there's a blessing in it. I don't want you to think that you're doing it for no reason, because you're submitting as unto the Lord, as unto Christ. You're submitting out of reverence for Christ. This is a God thing. See, marriage is a God thing, and that's where we mess up. We think it's a love thing. It ain't a love thing. It is, but it isn't. This is a God thing. And so because we marry, because we get butterflies in our stomach and we feel some type of way and they make us smile and they make us giddy. See, we get married for the wrong reasons. We end up staying for the wrong reasons. We end up leaving for the wrong reasons. Everything is for the wrong reasons because the core foundation is flawed. Our basic premise is flawed. If you have a flawed premise, you're going to have a flawed conclusion. That's the way it works. The premise is flawed. So when we begin to understand really what marriage is about, so let's talk about that for just a second. Marriage is not about love. Did I mess some people up? Yes, love is a part of it, but love ain't everything. Tina said it best when she said, what's love got to do with it? Listen, because our understanding of love is often also flawed. The way that we have turned words that God gave us into things that the world has said has messed us up. It's jacked us up. It's put us in a place where we are moving off of flawed premises and ending up with flawed conclusions and unable to fulfill what it is that God has created us to fulfill. So here we go. So let's talk about what is marriage about. It is about purpose and destiny. God's purpose in the earth. It is about a man and a woman. It is about two people coming together to fulfill the purpose and the destiny that God has given them. But if you do not know your purpose and your destiny, and if they do not know their purpose and their destiny, you just got two people who don't know why they're doing what they're doing, coming together to try to figure some stuff out. And because you did not have clear direction, because you didn't have a clear understanding, you are now moving with someone, and now you may discover that your purpose is taking you over here and their purpose is taking them over there, and you're wondering why you can't come together because you're not moving on one accord. You did not have a common mission. This is why I encourage everyone, single, married, listen, you need a mission statement for your life. You need a mission statement for your life. What is your purpose? What is your purpose and your destiny? See, if two people come together and each person knows what their mission is, then you can see, does our missions match? Can we work together on manifesting this? Do they complement one another? They do not have to be the same, but they must at least be complementary. But we don't do that because we think it's about love. That's what we think it's about. So because we got a butterfly in our stomach. We think because they're fine, they look good. We think because they smell good and they dress nice. We think because they know the word or they say the right things, right? We think about equally yoked, and we think about it only as we have the same religion. No. There is more to being equally yoked than just that. See, we don't want to necessarily do the work required to get a clear understanding of who we are and what our purpose is. So therefore, we don't know who we are. And if you don't know who you are, you'll allow other people to tell you who you are, or you'll adjust who you were created to be who someone else or who you think someone else wants you to be. It should not be the case. It should be that two people are coming into the relationship, each of them knowing who they are, able to come together with their mission to see if their missions are complementary, if they can work this mission together, if they can do destiny together, if they can do life together, because that'll keep you when the love is a little rocky, when you ain't got no butterflies no more, you just queasy. Because they have made you sick with some of the stuff that they do. It'll get you through the tough parts. It'll allow you to submit even if you don't agree. Now, y'all listen. Listen. Now, y'all can listen or not listen. Y'all may say, well, Dr. V, you've been married 5 times. How can you even say this? In those 5 times, guess what I learned? Submission. I had to learn it. Where I learned it the most is 4 and 5. My 4th and my 5th marriages, because I'm hard-headed. You know, I have to learn some stuff the hard way. I'm just talking about me. I would prefer that other people not have to go through what I went through to learn what I had to learn, okay? But in marriage number 4, my husband was a minister, went on to become a pastor. And listen, I practiced submission like it was nobody's business. He had a problem with people calling my number after 5 o'clock. I changed my number. Now, listen, you're going to notice some things as I tell this story. So I want you to pay attention. Okay. This will tell you how deep it is. Okay. So y'all know I'm pretty independent, you know, but I changed my number because he said, you need to change your number. I don't want people calling you after this time. I relayed the message. Okay. I began to cut some people off. I began to disconnect. I made sure that he ate. I made sure that, you know, on Sundays, our family was matching. We were all together. Like, I submitted in a way that I had never submitted before in my entire life. I submitted. I sat in the pew. I didn't really preach. I submitted. I supported the ministry. I did whatever needed to be done. I served. That's what I did. Now, I want you to check this out. That marriage was verbally, emotionally, and spiritually abusive. But I submitted until God said enough. It took God saying enough for me to stop. When God said enough, that's when I moved. That's when I transitioned. But I didn't stop until God said enough. Okay. Now, I'm not encouraging people to stay in abusive relationships. I'm not. I want you to hear me. Okay. God gave me my release. And when God gave me my release, that's when I moved. Okay. Only God could release me. Even though there was verbal, emotional, and spiritual abuse, I could not leave. And I can remember sitting in the pulpit because he wanted to license me. Okay. He wanted to, like, I was ordained already, but he wanted to license me. And okay. All right. So I went through the process, and I remember sitting in the pulpit, and I remember him preaching a message. And I remember him low-key preaching about me in a negative, very negative way. And I remember sitting up there, not being able to say anything, not being able to move. I was sitting there, and I remember tears coming to my eyes, and I remember a tear like rolling down my face because I couldn't believe that he was doing that. But I endured it. I endured a lot in that marriage. I endured a lot. And I grew. And I matured. You see, sometimes God will allow things to occur in your life. And I know that, this is not, people don't think that God does this. But that marriage, God told me to marry him. Yeah, that was a God one. That God did that one, because I would not have picked him. My last 2 marriages, God told me to do. Now, I know there will be people who will say God wouldn't tell you to do that if it was going to end in divorce. But listen, all I know is I do what he says, right? And so that marriage was a God move. And I stayed until God said exit. Like that, I couldn't exit until God said exit. And I submitted. And I remember we had an occasion where after we had split up, he was saying to me that, something like, I didn't cover him. And I could not believe he was saying to me that I didn't cover him. And he was telling me how these pastors told him that, I should have covered him, and and I had been covering him the entire time. Like, there was so much that happened that people did not know about, which is why the separation and divorce was shocking to a lot of people, because they didn't know all that was going on, right? Now, my family knew that was in the house because they saw it, but other people didn't know. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know the things that I was going through. They didn't know what I was enduring, right? So people looking at our marriage from the outside in, we looked like this amazing power couple, but they didn't know that every time I preached and someone said, oh my God, you preach so good, you preach better than, that I went home to hell. I went through hell after that. It was hell for me after that, because, how dare they think I preach better than him, which for me, it was never a competition. Like, all I do is declare the word of the Lord. But for them to say that hurt his ego. And I would get it. I would get the brunt of that. Now, he never touched me. He never physically hit me, because to be honest with you, I'm just going to be very real with you. I got to a point where I had to let him know, and this might not have been godly, but I will kill you dead. Don't try me. That's what we're not going to do. So I still had to learn submission in that relationship. But the other thing I learned how to lean in to God. And I learned how to trust God in a way that I had not had to trust him before. And I gained an appreciation of the struggle of people in abusive relationships that I never had before, because I felt like women who were in abusive relationships were weak, and all they had to do was leave. I didn't understand all the dynamics. You see, by the time you get to marriage number 4, you feel like, oh, well, maybe it is me, and so maybe I just need to just submit and just, do, maybe that's it. And if I just do that, then everything will be fine. But I did that and everything still wasn't fine, but it doesn't change the fact that we're called to submit unto our husbands as unto Christ. That's the key. And if you do what God tells you to do, then God will take care of the rest, right? So that's part of it. We look at submission as a dirty word, but it's a gift. It really is a gift to submit. And the right relationship, when you submit to your husband, you have burden and weight lifted off of you. It just got to be the right man. Y'all, listen, if you're single, make a point of doing everything in your power to wait on God so that you marry the right man so that you can submit. And it requires respect. At the bottom of this chapter, it says, and the wife must respect her husband. Do you know how much easier it is to submit to a man that you respect? When you respect a man, like he can say something to you and you hear it differently. There's something that happens when you really respect someone. You listen to them differently. So as strong-willed as you may be, when that person says something to you, you're more likely to listen. I was talking to some friends of mine who are pastors, and I have a lot of respect for them. Like, I respect them. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't respect, other people, but I have a lot of respect for them. So, I was telling him, I said, I appreciate you because you can say stuff to me that other people can't say to me, and I'm going to hear it because I respect you, because of how much I respect you. When you have a certain amount of respect for people, you hear them differently and you respond differently. So if you don't respect a man, then you definitely don't need to marry that man. And if you don't respect him enough to submit to him, you definitely don't need to marry him. And if you don't plan on submitting, you don't need to get married. Like, this is just real facts, y'all. If we want to really begin to heal the church, it starts with the family, and healing the family is getting into alignment with God's word. That just is. As independent as I am, as strong-willed as I am, listen, it is what I have learned. It is what I have learned. God's way works. Now this is just not for wives and women. This is also for the men. Men, you gotta love your wives as Christ loved the church. Now check this out. So remember, I talked earlier about ways we miss it with submission, right? If a woman can't submit to God, she can't submit to her husband, right? Like, that's not going to work. In the same way, listen, it says, for husbands, this means love your wives just as Christ loved the church. He gave up his life for her, right? Now, if you, and it goes on and says, husbands ought to love their wives as they love their own bodies. So let's start there with that premise. Husbands ought to love their wives as they love their own bodies. If you don't love your own body as a man, then how can you love that woman? If you love her the way you love your body, she gonna get jacked up and you gonna be jacked up. Y'all need to pay attention. If a man does not love his body, if he does not take care of his body, if he doesn't care about his body, how you think he gonna love you? This is what the word says. The word says that husbands ought to love their wives as they love their own bodies. If he does not love his own body, how is he going to love you? If she does not submit to God, how is she going to submit to you? It is our relationship with God that gets mirrored in marriage. Our relationship with God gets mirrored in marriage. And so we end up missing it. Thus, we end up with a divorce rate in the church that's higher than the divorce rate in the world. What the what? Are you kidding me? Because we are not paying attention to what the word is trying to teach us, the principles, the foundations. So we end up jacked up. If a man is not taking care of his body, if he does not take care of himself, he is not going to be able to love you the way you need to be loved. Similarly, if he is not willing to sacrifice for you, like Christ sacrificed for the church, again, what do you think you're going to get? Men, let me say this. If you don't feel compelled to sacrifice for a woman, she might not be the one. Because the one, you're going to want to sacrifice for her. You're going to want to make sure she's good. You're going to want to take care of her and her needs and make sure that she's taken care of. You're going to want to do that. If you don't feel compelled to do that, she's not the one. Let her go. Let her go. So when we're dealing with marriage, we got to deal with the woman and her submission. We got to deal with the man and his love. We got to deal with respect, because respect leads to submission, okay? You got to have it. You got to have it. You got to have it. But this is the other thing. When you talk to people who have been married, one of the main reasons, so there are several main reasons that people get divorced. Money, sex, and family. Money, sex, and family, okay? So verse 31, we begin to deal with the fact that the scriptures say, a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. Another problem, we don't want to leave our families. We don't want to leave our families. So we're trying to be one, but we don't want to leave our families. And because we don't leave our families are too invested and too into what's going on in our household. And when you got other people all in your household, it's going to lead to problems. You got to be able to leave daddy and mommy and cleave to your wife. That means mothers, for those of us who are mothers of sons, you're not the number one woman in that man's life. You're not the number one woman in your son's life. His wife is. It's his job to make sure his wife is good. His wife is taken care of, not you. You to an extent, but after his wife. You understand? After his wife. And the moment you begin to put a demand on him to make you more important than his wife, then what you've done is you've violated scriptures. You violated scripture. And you've now become a wedge in that marriage. And that's not okay. Mothers, let your sons take care of their wives. Okay? Make sure that you are not the reason that they got problems in their household. Got to deal with it. Sons who love their mothers. Some may call them mama's boys, right? You're not ready to get married if you can't prioritize your wife above your mother. You're not ready. You're not there yet, or she's not the one. Those are facts. So we've got to understand these dynamics before we say I do. Now, this is the next thing. This is the next thing, because it's just some things that we struggle with. Hold on. Let me pull this down, because I need to talk to y'all. I need y'all to see my face. Okay. Let me pull this down. So let me say this, because I want us all to be real clear. And I'm talking to myself too. I know that I'm not just talking to y'all, I'm talking to me, right? Marriage is an honorable institution, but it's not one to be entered into lightly. And we've got to understand that. We've got to treat it with the appropriate respect. We've got to know that at some point, if you've been married multiple times, as I have, you got to really do some deep diving in your life, into your mind, your psyche, your emotions, your experiences, your past, and figure out what the heck is going on so that you can heal. We're entering into marriages unhealed, half a person. Two halves don't make a whole. Marriage is two whole people coming together to create another whole entity. Two whole people coming together to create another whole entity. When you got a whole person and a half a person, you're going to get a lopsided entity. We've got to understand that healing is paramount to us being able to form effective unions. If you have trouble with submission, why do you have trouble with submission? What happened in your life, in your childhood, that makes you not want to submit? Were you violated? Did someone take advantage of you? Did someone in a position of power abuse that power? Like, you got to find out what is at the root of it and deal with the root before you're going to be ready to move forward. If you're having trouble loving, what is that about? What is that about? Do you have mommy issues? Do you have daddy issues? What issues do you have that you need to deal with? At the end of the day, it is when we get healed and whole that God is able to bring two whole people together and create one whole unit. Some people get it right the first time. Some people get it right the second time. Some people get it right the third time. Some people get it right the fourth time or the fifth time. I didn't get it right any of those times, right? It did not come together for me any of those times. But check this out. God is not through with me. And what he's done is he's given me the opportunity to engage in healing so that I could identify those things in me that were problems, that were issues, that were barriers to an effective marriage. I can identify and own my part in stuff. I could grow. He began to sandpaper the rough edges off of me so that I could become like a smooth stone. You understand? See, we get this thing twisted. And because we get it twisted, we then try to denounce the word and say, oh, no, I don't have to submit. Listen, I remember submission wasn't even in my vows. I'm not saying I'm going to submit. Who? No, take that out. We're not using that version. That was a problem. I remember getting married and not changing my name. There was a problem. There was a problem. All of these things are things that God began to reveal to me. All of these things are things that I learned over the course of my marriages. All of these things are things that I can now share with other people so that you don't have to go through what I went through to get the revelation that I got about marriage. And I'm going to tell y'all something. When I get married again, it's going to be for life. But now I know what I need in a mate. I know some things now that I didn't know then. I know some things about who I am and what I'm called to be and my destiny that I can't be connected to anyone who cannot complement and facilitate and embrace and be a part of that journey and that destiny. I can't. I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in being married because sex is good. I'm not interested in being married because I get butterflies. I'm not interested in being married because they dress nice or they smell good or they look like the type of person or they have the appropriate title. None of those things matter if our purpose and our destinies do not align. We out here getting married for all the wrong reasons, wondering why they're not working. But the good news is this. It doesn't matter how many times you've gotten it wrong. It doesn't matter how many times it's not worked. What matters is that you come to understand who you are and your destiny and your purpose and the foundations and the premises of marriage in a new way, in God's way. Because God's way really does work. It just does. So I challenge you today. To do some work, to do some research, to figure out what are those things that are barriers and blocks for you. Okay? Women, why can't you submit? Or why do you keep choosing a man who's the same man with a different name or a different body, but the same patterns, the same behaviors? Why do you keep doing that? What is it in your past? What is it in you that is causing you to do that? See, this is where we got to start with us. Men, I challenge you. Why is it that you can't love her the way she needs to be loved, that you're not protecting her, you're not taking care of her, you're not safe, or why is she not respecting you? What's going on? What is that dynamic? And that's not that there's something necessarily wrong with you. It's that you may be choosing based on the wrong things. But regardless, it starts with self. And every relationship that we've had has affected us in some shape, form, or fashion, either good or bad, sometimes both. Our childhood has affected us. These are things that have affected us. And we've got to do the work. We've got to get back and do the work. We've got to begin to heal. You've got to begin to heal. Because until you heal, you're not going to be ready for that person. Even if the person showed up in your life today, if you've not healed, you will find a way to sabotage it, find a way to mess it up, find a way to destroy it. So you've got to heal. Towards that end, this evening, Coach Eric Shaw and I have partnered to offer a free class on how to start your self-healing journey. How to start your self-healing journey. And I encourage you, join us. It's absolutely free. Come prepared to learn something, to engage, to get something that you need. If you're dating someone, invite them to do it with you. But it's time. It's time for us to truly heal. Heal so that what God desires to do in our lives can manifest. Heal so that God's work, his best work, can be manifested in our lives. Heal so that we can return to our Eden status in our marriages. God desires healing. He desires that. And this is the time for you to obtain it. He wants you. He wants to heal you. And we come bringing that masculine and that feminine energy. We come bringing the male and the female perspective. But most importantly, we center it in God. We don't sound all churchy. We operate in the principles and the tenets. So what we do is provide you with a safe space to heal together. See, so often men are healing separate and apart from women. Women are healing separate and apart from men. But there's something that happens in this space that allows you to embrace that vulnerability and be encouraged. As a woman, to see a man walking out healing. As a man, to see women walking out healing. That's the part. That's the part that I want you guys to understand. There's power in that. So the class is tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go to bit.ly/self-heal now. Register for the class. It's absolutely free. Come and get the foundations of how to start your healing journey. I'm telling you, it is an amazing class. Stacey said it. And you're going to learn so much and grow so much. And so will we. Y'all, God is doing something new. Don't you want to be a part of it? Don't you want to be a part of this new move that he's making in your life? Don't you want to actively engage in it? Go ahead, register for the class. Absolutely free. You're going to learn how to start your healing journey. And it's going to be incredible. That's what I can tell you. Every time it's incredible, and it's not always the same. So listen, there's no telling what God is going to do in tonight's class, okay? So I want you to go to bit.ly/self-heal now and register. Get your ticket so that you can get in there and you can participate. God desires to do more in your life. And listen, as we are closing out, as we're closing out, I want you to know that God desires to move in your life. And if you've been blessed by today's word and you desire to sow into this ministry, you can go to Cash App, $Passion and Pursuit. $Passion and Pursuit. God is trying to do something in your life. And what a blessing. What a blessing for God to love us enough to want to do something for us. I love that about our daddy. That's my daddy. He just loves us. Embrace his love. Know that his love is real. Know that he only wants the best for you, for all of us. And remember that all things work together for your good. Every single one of them. And I don't care how many missteps, mistakes, bad relationships you had, all of it is working together for your good. That's what you got to remember. He wants to release his power. God is doing what only God can do. And we're going to let him do it. We're going to let him have his way. I want to thank you guys for tuning in this morning. I pray that you heard something that blessed your soul. Don't forget, go register for the class. And know this, that God's best for you is out there waiting. Get clear. Learn who you are. Identify your purpose and your mission. And let God and that lead you in your relationships. I love you guys to life and life more abundant. Be blessed. Mwah. With the heart of expectation, manifest.